Hi, everybody. This is Bob Ost, and this is Theater Resources Unlimited. It's our Friday community gathering. It's January 28th. We're all sitting with bated breath, waiting for a snowstorm to completely cover our city here in New York. Those of you who are not in New York, you may be getting some weather of different sorts. I know we have somebody from Palm Springs where it's absolutely beautiful and sunny and beautiful in Palm Springs. And down in Australia, Emma, I don't know, I don't think you're expecting snow down there. But here we are talking about, well, we started off talking about COVID and pandemic and isolation and all these other things. And now we're in a place where we are starting to see a future that is not isolated anymore, that a future that actually where we can all socialize and go out and be part of a group again. So the conversations are changing a little bit. Today we're going to have a difficult conversation. I'll just say it frankly. It's just a hard conversation. It's a conversation that a lot of people have avoided having for a long time, and now we're all just sort of owning it and saying there's stuff going on and we have to acknowledge it, and we have to really we at least have to talk about it. It would be nice if we could do something about it too, but at least talking about it is a start. So I want you to meet some special guests today. I'm very, very proud and pleased to have Adam Heinmann and Tara Moses with me today. Adam and Tara, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Broadway for Racial Justice. That's just a hint for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about today, the controversy that we're going to wade into. Tara, say hi. It's good to meet you.
Great to meet you too. So he's just on go Teratoad Chefkados. So hello everyone. My name is Tara Moses. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a citizen of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, as well as Muskogee Creek, and I'm calling in from Narragansett land, or what is colonially known as Providence, Rhode Island. I am indeed from Oklahoma, so I do have a Southern accent. I like to warn people because it tends to be a surprise. But with that, I am a director, a playwright, the artistic director of Red Eagle Soaring, which is a 31-year-old Native youth theater based in Seattle. I'm also the co-founder of Groundwater Arts, and lots of other things, including on the advisory board for Broadway for Racial Justice. And I think I'll leave it there for now and throw it over to you, Adam.
Well done. Adam.
Hi, folks. My name is Adam Heinmann. My pronouns are he, him. I'm joining today from Lenapehoking, land of the Lenape, Muncie Lenape, also known as Harlem, New York. And I am a producer, performer, and activist. I currently work with Octopus Theatricals, producing projects as well as performing in the company of Hadestown. I was a producer for The Inheritance, and I sit on the board of directors for Broadway for Racial Justice, as well as the board of Pipeline Theater Company and Producer Hub. So a lot of my work is centered at the intersection of anti-racism and artistry, and I'm very happily a facilitator in many different spaces and communities, sometimes with Tara, which is wonderful because the conversation that you kind of opened us up with, Bob, is certainly one that is crucial, important, can be difficult at times, but my work with Tara has also always proven to be generative. The conversation can be joyful and hopeful as well. It's just about what season and what kind of access point we are in the conversation, right? And that's so much like life, right? Where we are is indicative of the experience. So I'm really happy to be sharing space with you all and to be connecting here.
Thank you. Well, I have to clarify that when I say it's a difficult conversation, it's a difficult conversation for those of us who haven't been used to having it. Um, you guys, thank God, have been having this conversation for a long time. Tell me, I've got a whole lot of questions for you to sort of collect some background information for everybody. When was a Broadway for Racial Justice created, um, and what was the impetus for it?
Sure. Broadway for Racial Justice was a collective that is now a not for profit founded in the summer of 2020. While the members that galvanized together have been active in the realms and the dialogue of equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism, it was really the catalyst of our industry's racial reckoning that this organization came together specifically for this purpose, to serve need, to create resources, to create support, and to create a community to process together, predominantly in the empowerment of BIPOC folks and artists working through this time. But it has spanned into a multi-pronged approach and movement to support theater making at every ecosystem, from community theater to the regional market, as well as conservatories and training programs, and of course in the commercial theater realm in New York.
I'm trying to. I want to give it a little bit of an historical perspective, a timeline perspective for people. Was it which happened first? Do we See You White America or Broadway for Racial Justice? How long have we really been actively dealing with the issues of um, lack of equity and diversity in theater? Um, how long has it been really an effective conversation that people? I mean, it's always been a rote conversation for liberals. You know, liberals have the rote conversation, and nothing ever changes. Um, I think that we're at a point where things are able to change now. I'm sort of heaping a lot of questions on top of questions, aren't I?
Sure.
Where,
Yeah,
where,
we'll start.
where would you like to start?
Maybe the front of the question. We See White America was announced before Broadway for Racial Justice. Is that right, Adam? Great. I'm also trying to keep my timelines square.
Yeah, the timeline is it's not crucial, but it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, in regards to the question of like, well, when did all of this movement start? I mean, the truth of the matter is, since time immemorial, like this movement towards racial justice and equity, especially in the theater, has been happening, and there have been like sweeping changes since, I think back to like the Black Federal Theater Project in like the 50s, 60s, right? Before then, like 1950s, 60s for folks here, and before then as well. I just think what I find to be so interesting is that there's so many folks who have just been so deep within their own white supremacy that they haven't noticed this movement's been going on a long time until it became trendy to pay attention in the summer of 2020. Adam, do you want to throw anything else?
Yeah, and I think it's certainly crucial to locate where we are right in the conversation, and how I think the conversation, as Tara has been saying, which has been relegated to the fringes of society, became part of the zeitgeist because of these intersecting crises that we've been dealing with, right? The fact that the pandemic and the isolation and quarantine that we were all forced to kind of be within our own experience, reckoning a lot of things at the time. The killing and the murder of George Floyd could have been just another awful killing that happens all the time in America, right? I don't have to
Yes.
share with anyone on this.
I mean, we can reach back to Rodney King. We can reach back to all sorts of examples over the years. The thing that's been just outrageous from the point of view of the BIPOC culture in general is the fact that as many times as we've acknowledged that there's a problem, we as a country and as a society have rarely done anything that is stuck, that has really made a change. And I think when George Floyd was shot, for whatever reason it was, I guess it was because we were meditative, we were in pandemic, we were in shutdown, we could actually notice things and not have life like be an excuse for us to not act and not react. So suddenly, there were others during the pandemic, even before George Floyd, but George Floyd just seemed to be the last straw, and it gives me hope. I don't know how far we've come since then, but we're not, in terms of the span of cultural change. We haven't gone that far. We're not that far from that. We're still reacting to that incident. So,
And also in terms of, expectation setting, we have a certain amount of time here together to talk about this. We have a certain amount of time here on this planet, and time is relative, which, if we're so lucky, Tara might indulge us in a bit more of that philosophy. But the idea that our pursuit and our active collective struggle for equity and social justice is not results based, right? It can't be. It actually has to be relationship based, right? We can't
okay,
think about it as
that's a manageable way of looking at it.
yeah, we can't think about it as an end result because we're so deeply entrenched in the systems that we operate in that we can't necessarily say that it is a black and white issue. It's part of our collective consciousness and responsibility that we need to be active in this work.
Carolyn Brown corrects me, and you're right, and I knew that too. George Floyd wasn't shot; he was suffocated with a knee on his chest. So I apologize for lumping that into other experiences that we've been through. But it was the killing. It was the killing of yet another black man, senselessly. Can't talk. Senselessly, and brutally. We are all of us who look like me are basically clothed in white entitlement. I mean, it was handed to us when we were born, and it's very hard to continually recognize areas in which we need to be better and we need to be more aware. So you wanted Tara to go a little bit more into that philosophy, and I'm hooked. I'm interested. I'd like to know, what more do you bring to this conversation, and I'll bet there's a lot.
Oh gosh, yes, so many things. So as Adam mentioned, time is relative. So especially in the theater, we are so intertwined with this like capitalism driven, product driven, how many shows can we put up? How many people can we exploit? How much money can we make in such a short amount of time? The theater itself in the United States, as it currently stands in the mainstream, is colonial, is rooted in white supremacy, and it's all about exploiting humans, predominantly Black, Indigenous, and other humans of color, predominantly, to make all of this money, right? Anyway, and so with that, time is something that I've heard so much. I am a producer, I understand. Anyway, oh, we can't do this because of time. Oh, because of time's sake, we can't dive into this issue of racism that has now occurred. We need to move on, so on and so forth. Anyway, so this is an adage that comes from my specific Seminole peoples, Southeastern Indigenous folks, that, I don't know, 50,000, 90,000 bunch years old, that is time is relative. So an example is, if you're with your grandma and you're taking her to bingo, that's the example I choose, and she needs a little bit more time to get out of the car, are you going to be mad at her, try to rush her? No, you're going to give her the time that she needs to get out of the car. And in turn, she's of course going to bake you cookies, be the best grandma we all want, right? And so it's the same thing with time. So time is relative in that number one, it's made up, like who cares? And number two, time is a relative. We have a personal relationship with time, and time takes care of us as we take care of it. And so with that, if we're crush up against deadlines, and why are we blaming time for that? Let's just move it. Who cares? Like, theater is not killing nobody, nor is it saving no lives. So like, we can move things around. You know, I feel as though, especially in the theater, like in all industries, and I've worked in many, theater is the worst about this. It's all about, oh no, because of time this, time that. And folks wonder why they don't never have enough time for things. It's because they're abusing a relative. If you're abusing me as a relative, yeah, I ain't gonna take care of you either. So it's a really simple adage to take away the colonization of time, because that's something that was brought by colonizers to this, like to these lands that didn't exist beforehand, into other indigenous lands globally. That's a very European colonized concept. Anyway, we're actually able to, number one, prioritize one another as humans and as relations. And then number two, we get more work done and people feel better because we care more about humans than we do about products and dollars. And we get to stop blaming grandmother time, who didn't do nothing wrong other than, you know, develop arthritis over age and need a little bit more time, get out the car. So that's how I tend to explain it. And that time is quite literally relative and that it doesn't exist. It's all arbitrary. And number two is an actual entity who we engage with like we would with another relation. Now, I understand this may be some news to a lot of people. I am very native. So, you know, some people tend to be like a little about it. But what I can tell you is that this is tried and true here. It's tried and true of global indigenous communities. And I'm just saying, y'all, if 99% of the world has been living by this and living by this successfully, then there ain't no reason why the 1% who never heard about this before needs to doubt it.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, I understand the metaphysics of what you're saying, and I'm actually a deeply spiritual person, so I'm right with you. Just in terms of the pragmatic, in terms of the empirical, in terms of the world that we're in, is it fair to say that in spite of the fact that we've been aware of the issues that we're dealing with for centuries, in spite of the fact that many of us own the fact that we're a colonist country, we basically are here at the expense of your people. Doesn't it still feel, even though time is a relative and time is relative, doesn't it simply still feel a little frustrating that we've moved so slowly in addressing this and making inclusion a priority?
Yeah, I mean, speaking for my own self, yeah, it's real tiring because
it must be exhausting.
Yeah, all the time, every day. When your, you know, identity is debated at the Supreme Court every single day, you know, it's pretty fun. But, you know, I mean, I say all the time, like if white folk would have just been listening to the leadership of Black and Indigenous and other leaders of color in this country, we'd done been fixed by now. But, you know, white supremacy is a thing that people like. They feel
it's an armor. It's hard, and it's hard to break through. It's really an armor for some of us. Some of us, it's become more of a sweater, but for a lot of people, it's a stiff in place armor that just is immutable and makes them unwilling to even face the possibility that there is a problem. And there are a lot of people in this country who still take the position that there is no problem.
Yeah, and I would say that's also indicative of, I think, the success, right? The success of white supremacy. You know, we can start naming things and just using it as objective data, right? That strategy for global expansion that was used became very successful, right? And it creates a very structured way of thinking, right? A hierarchical way of thinking that has permeated in other ways of being that have permeated in all areas of society, and it's been very successful, right? So it's hard to break the mentality that this isn't completely entwined with life, right? But this is actually a way of structuring life that has been successful. As Tara was saying, there have been so many different modalities to life and so many different modalities that indigenous cultures have implemented, right? We're completely steeped in a particular modality of structure, hierarchy, that's based in one way of thinking. So it's hard for us, of course, because we live and breathe and swim in it every day, to think that there's anything else. But that's just indicative of the success.
And I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And I think to offer, in case there's folks who are there who are feeling like a little on edge, or some like a little alarm bells ringing, don't worry, y'all, I understand. Anyway, about hearing, out of myself and other folks of color, if you're in relationship with folks, about like the frustration and the anger that we harbor and hold, which is 100% valid and real and could have been avoided. But what I would have loved for you all to walk away with, just one of the things, is that the time you start is the right time. You needed the time that you needed. Again, this is part of time being relative. We take care of it. So like, I'm not angry at anyone who needed this much time to understand the gravity of the problem and the solutions that are at hand. Absolutely not. Because again, that's part of the time being relative. But if we want to move forward together, it's also about meeting people where they're at and where you are at, and being able to take them forward. Now, don't misconstrue. That's not me, there to handhold your emotions as you work through your white fragility. That ain't for me. That's for your fellow white friends. But that's just something I hope that folks leave today's conversation with, feeling hopeful and inspired, that if today's the day for you to start taking steps, awesome, great, glad you're here. And to not beat yourself up or feel upset about it, or, aversely feel angry at myself or Adam, which how can you be mad at Adam? It's impossible. So mainly me, anyway.
Look at that thing. Look at that punim, said the Jewish guy. Look at that punim. You can't be mad at that punim.
But that's so good, Tara, because the idea that, it's about doing better when we know better, right?
Well, I want to go back to the concept of time, because I just want to put an underline under something that we almost said, or even may have actually said. We had time for the last 2 years. That's the big difference right now, is that people had no excuse to run away from this. We were sitting in our apartments saying, what am I going to do with myself? Oh my goodness, look at what's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe I should think about that more. I think that COVID, oh God, I hate to say this. I think COVID was a gift from God. I think God was just fed up and said, go to your room and think about what you've done, everyone. And basically, I think that is, I think, helps support the movement forward that has been staggering up till now. And it's been frustrating for some of us. I can't tell you the number of times. I'm 70 years old. I can't tell you the number of times in my life where I've sat and gone, wow, now something's going to change. And for a week, a month, it looks like it will, and there's a little wiggle, and nothing really happens. And then we're back to where we were. It has been decade after decade, year after year. I choose to believe. I declare that this is a different time. I declare that because we've had time to really think about it, and we've been sitting in isolation and haven't been able to let time be an excuse for not doing what we need to do and not thinking what we need to think. I want to believe it. I just want to believe that this is it. That this is the turning point. Yeah. Do you think that there's a chance?
I mean, every moment, I think, has the opportunity to be a radical shift in certainly our own ecosystems. That's very much in line with the idea of emergent strategy, that we can all be operating in ripple effects, that we can all be doing our own portion, where it's not about one person carrying an outsized portion for the world. It's up for us to be having this conversation and to realize, oh, this is what I can do today. This is how I can continue to be reciprocal in my relationships. This is how I can make a choice that can move the needle in my ecosystem, in my little pond, which will also continue these ripple effects. And every day has that opportunity for a turning moment. But
I want to actually throw in my words of frustration. In spite of what we've gone through, and in spite of what we think we've learned, voting rights are being suppressed. Brazenly suppressed. What can we do? What can we do to assure that the country is not going to go back to?
Well, I have a really direct, very practical answer to that question for every white person on this call. What you can do, you have an obligation, not me, not Adam, not any other person of color. You have the obligation to educate your own people, right? Because I know this whole, we don't talk about politics at Thanksgiving. First of all, anyway, but you know what I mean? Y'all got family members. I know each and every one of you do. Who
Tara,
are
I want to say I don't have the family members at Thanksgiving who don't talk about politics, but I got to tell you that it's a brutal conversation for some families.
And what I'm telling you is what's more brutal is that my people continually get killed in this country. Adam's peoples continually be killed in this country. It may be difficult to have conversations, but what's more upsetting when I hear that excuse, Bob, if I may be frank, it is an excuse, is because white folks' fragility and white supremacy manifests in prioritizing your own comfort over the literal lives of other people. All right, I ain't here to play the oppression Olympics, but like this is a stated fact. Anyway, and so what I want you all to do is have those difficult conversations and don't have excuses about it. Because if you want to honestly know why we have not progressed, it's because of excuses rooted in white fragility as such. And I really want to hand it over to Adam if there's anything you want to add here, because I think it's important.
Yeah, I think that that's what it comes down to, the interrogation of our own comfort, right? The idea that change hasn't happened is because people have made decisions to prioritize not making change, right?
Well, I just want to say because I've been put on the defensive, so I'm going to be defensive. The conversation.
Interrupting Adam. Please don't interrupt Adam. This right here, Bob. I want to be frank. What you're doing by interrupting Adam there, that's inserting your white supremacy into the room. That may be hard to sit with.
I was going to ask a question.
Well, Adam wasn't done speaking.
Okay.
I think it's great if he could finish speaking first. And by all means, ask questions.
So part of the thought that I wanted to finish was just about the prioritization of comfort, right? And it's kind of to tie up a bow on your initial question about why hasn't change happened, and we hope for it. I think all well-intentioned people, right, hope that progress will happen and change will happen because we understand that change is actually going to benefit all of us together. But the reason it doesn't happen is because of our micro choices, that we prioritize comfort, our own circumstance, instead of prioritizing the responsibility we have to be uncomfortable with the uncomfortable things. And that's privilege. That's privilege. We have the ability to say, I'm privileged enough to say I'm going to choose the comfort instead of my responsibility to make shifts for the prioritization of people who are in the survival place. I'm saying my comfort is more important than somebody else's survival. And that's just privilege.
Okay, what I was trying to say is that a lot of us are having those conversations. The problem that we're having is that the people who hold the other point of view in our families don't listen. I don't know. We don't know how to get through to them. So it's not that we don't have the conversation, and it's not that I don't feel that I have white fragility, but maybe I do. I actually am. I'm here having a conversation with you. I knew it was going to be a difficult one, and I faced that, and I'm doing it anyway because I think it needs to be done. We also, many of us in our families, have people that are frankly crazy. And we don't know how to have those conversations with the people that aren't listening to us. And not only are not listening to us, but are mocking us and being angry at us and yelling at us. So
Well, you don't have to prioritize their comfort.
that makes me uncomfortable with them being yelled at. All right.
I mean,
Sounds like
also
therapy.
outside of your families. Yes, thank you. I don't know who unmuted, but therapy, great. Let's go. Let's all go to therapy. Anyway, if you're having issues with this uncomfortability, but also it doesn't just stop with your families. It goes on to your friends. It goes on to your coworkers. It goes on to your representatives in the government. Because I can tell you from firsthand experience, the government, like our representatives, senators, so on and so forth, on both the local, state, and national level, pay more attention to a white person's voice than they do to mine. And so that is who your community is. It's the community of the larger white folk in whom you have relationships with. And don't get me wrong, don't we all got that Uncle Billy Bob and ain't nothing gonna change his mind? Fine. Our goal is to make those folks be the outlier. Great. If you've done everything humanly possible to try to get through to said person and it doesn't work, okay, great, move on. You have thousands of folks who you can be in conversation with. Anyway, and so again, when the buck stops in folks' own internalized fragility, that's why progress doesn't happen. That's why it doesn't happen.
Let's try to turn this back to theater for a second, if we can. What we saw happen this past year as a result of We See You White America and other things that have raised awareness, we've seen an effort being made to have more BIPOC voices heard on Broadway. We've had a lot more, it doesn't mean it's enough, but we've had a lot more plays that have opened that have been by BIPOC writers and produced by a BIPOC team. And how do you see that as helping or not the whole cause that we're trying to do in terms of changing the perception of our Broadway theater goer?
Well, we certainly need to see work that is reflective of the societies that we're in, right? I think it's a great thing to be intentional about including different narratives, including different storytellers, right? And I think it's particularly important for those stories and for all roads to be two-way, for us to be building reciprocal relationships across all of these opportunities for engagement. What the indicator will be is whether these intentions for more inclusion and diversity are also systemic, if they're going to be a part of a movement rather than versus just a moment, right? So that is also something that time will tell. We'll see how these relationships are built in reciprocal ways, or if the intention is simply, let's do the BIPOC show, right?
Well,
It's also great.
the practical. I'm sorry, Tara. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, I think it's also great to mention that there are like producing organizations that can help assist. You know, I really want to shed a light on the theater industry standard group that Adam is one of the co-founders for, and I would love Adam want to talk a little bit about it, just so folks know that this exists.
Yeah, TISG. I'll put a link in later. It's the Industry Standard Group, and it's an organization.
Say it again. We didn't hear you.
It's called the Industry Standard Group, and it is an organization that is looking to interject into commercial producing with access truly at the forefront, right? As you all know, Broadway and commercial theater utilizes a particular type of financing, right? Accredited investors are invited to participate in Regulation D offerings, right? This is held by the SEC, and Broadway productions and those capitalizations have to protect certain individuals, non-accredited folks, from the liability, right? However, we know that these systems implemented by the SEC to protect folks without a comfortable level of assets also prevent those same folks from participating in many things in our financial system and economy that can grow wealth, right? So, how can we, at the same time as protecting folks who might not be accredited investors, also open the door up? So, the industry standard group is really rooted in the idea of collective economics, where we can join together. And this is actually very new from the SEC as of 2020, where a new regulation called CF has opened up to allow for certain accredited uh, profiles to open the door to anyone to be a part of a producing or an investing conglomerate. So that we're the first model to implement this into commercial theater, and we're truly building it in the service of all people by building it to uplift and empower BIPOC folks. So you can check out the link more. There's a lot to check out, but
To the best of your knowledge, there have been, I think, seven BIPOC plays that have opened on Broadway. With I think an eighth is now open. So it's been a stream, what we perceive as a stream compared to the past. Have they had a lot of? I know the BIPOC. I know the producers have been. Many of them have been African American, Black, but have the investors? Has there proved to be an investor pool from the BIPOC community that actually can support and does support theater? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Sure. I think that's also part of our responsibility and our kind of our work to continue to make theater accessible to all of our populations, right? I think that's one reason why raising, is hard in general, right? Because oftentimes it's so much easier to just raise from the same people who already understand the model, right?
Right.
However, there's assets and there's resources in so many different parts of our country, in so many different communities. And the hard part is making it accessible and having the understanding and what I really think transparency to allow people to jump into this thing that is so culturally rich that people would love to be a part of in their financial portfolios. But I would certainly say there's plenty of BIPOC communities with resources and assets to support. How we're doing that is still to be said. I think one other thing that I wanted to say too around the statistic of particularly the 7 Broadway shows with Black playwrights that have opened during this time, it fills me with such joy, and it's such an amazing moment of representation, and it's really awesome to see how diverse all of those shows, all written by Black people, are too. That I think that's such an amazing indicator of the breadth and width and nuance that is in existing in any community. What I really also want to see, and to reiterate how this could not just be a moment but part of the forwarding movement, is seeing this much diversity in any other season, and also this much diversity in a season that isn't full of all this liability in the midst of reopening our business and COVID shutdowns and all of those things. So
that's actually the danger. That's the downside of what we're doing now. Basically, all of these plays are opening in a time when success is already is just challenged. Difficult to succeed is already, and now we're in this terrible time. I hope that the message doesn't become we couldn't attract audiences. I hope the message becomes it was a great thing that we all tried to do. Let's try to do it again in better times.
Or just welcoming the fact that we all belong together in this space. That it's really not.
Yeah.
I hate the idea, which is tough, that it's like, oh, is this an experiment of like, is it viable to like be producing these types of narratives? I really want to reframe it. This is even in my own personal dialogues that I'm having with folks. Instead of being like, oh, well, that wasn't successful or that wasn't whatever, we're actually saying like, oh, how does this open up the door to this person's work or this person's catalog or who they're in relationship? Because theater is so it contains so much potential for healing that we have to uncover during this time, right? But
Absolutely.
if we're not telling the stories to bring all the parties to heal so we can all be convening in this space, we're doing half the battle.
Well, I think part of the battle has been to bring the voices of the lesser heard voices to the stage. The other important thing is to develop more producers of color, more BIPOC producers, because they're the people that will have the invested interest in getting those voices onto the stage. There are non-BIPOC, there are white producers who have an affinity for and an understanding of the importance of the less usual voices. But in general, I think we need to develop more BIPOC producers. I know Stephen Bird and Aaliyah Jones-Harvey have a program that they're doing with Columbia, and I know Rashad Chambers has a program that he's also doing. So that gives me as much hope as the fact that we had 7 plays open and some close already on Broadway.
Yeah,
I also think
yeah. Go ahead, Tara.
Oh, no, I want you to repeat yourself. I'm sorry because I didn't hear you.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, absolutely, Bob. I really think it's about the integration, right? You know, diversity can't just be on one side. For us to really get to the point of belonging, we need to say, how do we need to be inclusive at every level, right? So often, optics runs that conversation around how can we prove that we're more diverse and inclusive. So we start on the stage, we start with who wrote the show, but a million decisions are being made in these collaborations. We all know this. How many collaborators are involved to make this Herculean effort of a new production happen? And making sure that we have enough perspectives to be responsible and reflective of the work and the communities we want to be engaging with in every room is the work. Not just about how, y'all know. Yeah.
Yeah, and also part of that work too is being specific. Because something I've been sitting over here was something that you said, Bob, about, BIPOC work on Broadway. And I was like, let's be specific. There are no Native actors, no Native playwrights, no Native directors, no Native producers on Broadway in over 100 years. So that does not include me. That does not include a lot of people. Right. And also like Black artists and Black folks in this country have a very specific experience. So by lumping them within people of color is also inappropriate. Like we need to be specific because this is how we get true equity is being specific, being honest, and being very clear and explicit about how these different lines of equity manifest and where they don't manifest. And also acknowledging the reason why, well, many reasons why, but a huge impact that we can't ignore of how we have these like 7 Black shows that came on Broadway is the decades and decades of advocacy work done by Black artists in this country. Decades and decades and decades of that work. Anyway, so that's just something I really want to throw in here is y'all don't say BIPOC if you don't mean BIPOC. Like if you don't have Native people doing stuff, don't say BIPOC, you got no eye. You can't be doing that. And like you gotta be specific.
Yeah, and that's part of like, I think the real work is the specificity, because then we don't have the data to also assess our work, right? And it's wonderful to celebrate, like, oh my gosh, look at all of these Black playwrights that we've welcomed into Broadway in this season. And we can actually look and be like, oh my gosh, great, we're making inroads here, we're making all of these areas, but say it's Black so we can celebrate that and be like, oh, where's the gap we haven't filled? Oh my gosh, there's a few Asian playwrights that are working in these lanes, and here is a Southeast Asian playwright that is different than this Asian playwright. And how can we actually create more diversity in one area of this conversation in the same way that we're doing, you know what I mean? So I think the data can actually help us when we're specific so that we can analyze our work, celebrate what we've accomplished, and also get to working on the gaps.
Okay, well, like I said, it's difficult to have these conversations because nobody really wants to have these conversations and misspeak. So, if I misspeak, I misspeak. You know, I as I was saying it, I was very aware of the fact that it was black playwrights and black producers, and I'm very aware that you were underrepresented, and also I'm also aware that the Asian population is also grossly underrepresented. Underrepresented. I don't know what I wear braces. I'm wearing braces, so it gets in the way of my talking. So,
I mean, but something, if I can, Bob, again, I promise y'all, I'm full of all of this like hope. I preach a lot. Anyway, I think that's another barrier is fear. Because yeah, like you just said, no one wants to come into these spaces and make a mistake. But I think again, which is a popular misconception, is that folks make a mistake, they're gonna get yelled at by the angry Indian, like the angry black man. That's not true. No, what we want, humility is a huge part of this work. And that comes with tackling white fragility that's internalized, but also knowing I want you to have that mistake in these spaces and then not take up more time to feel sorry for yourself, try to make excuses. Absolutely not. This is a space to make the mistakes, learn and move forward, without bearing that emotional labor onto like the underrepresented peoples in the room. Right. Anyway, so I very much welcome mistakes. And when I consult, and Adam, when we've consulted together, we've said a lot, like this is the space to ask the questions you think are stupid, or ask the questions that you're scared if you ask, people are gonna like cancel you, or like terrible things are going to happen, the world's gonna fall apart. Anyway, like
so I'm going to take you on your word on that. Since it's 6:20, I want to ask the people in the room to basically, you can turn on your mics and come in and ask a question. I would prefer if you would raise your hand virtually so I can call on you.
Yeah.
Okay, Zilla.
I also want to share and continue to ground this space too is, and I knew we would circle back on this too, with the way that you've been holding this space, Bob, is exactly the work that has to be done, right? And I believe that, it's part of our philosophy, Tara and I, that we hold the space in accountability, right? And exactly just how, we have to address and we have to speak and we have to talk about the issues that are on the forefront. And there's going to be emotions around that, and there's going to be reactions, and we feel like we got it wrong, or we feel like someone's yelling at us or whatever, but we're actually not. We don't have to take it as offense, but we do have to hold the space accountable, right? And it's not about good or bad, and it's not about personal. It's just about us saying the things that are usually never said.
So I have to do a little housekeeping. I just want to tell everybody, one at a time, I'd like you to come into the room. I don't want everybody to come into the room right now. I still want to keep the focus on Adam and Tara. So Gregory had his hand up. Zilla, you came in first. I don't know who wins.
Zilla, you can go first.
Yeah, please, Gregory.
Oh, me? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
First off, thank you all for the work that you do. I wrote a show that is predominantly Spanish oriented, and I would like to have it commercially produced. However, I don't want it to appear as if I'm culturally appropriating the source material in addition to the BIPOC and Latinx casting, because those are the people who are able to tell the story best. How can creators like myself, because I'm white and I'm Jewish, be able to tell stories that are culturally appreciative rather than culturally appropriating stuff?
I feel like this is my life every day. I get my inbox is full of well-meaning white folk wanting to write Native stories. So what I can offer is, number one, you got money, pay consultants. Can you pay a collaborator, have a co-writer? And if they want to change things that you've written, be okay with that. Something that I do as a playwright, which is really, really powerful, is that I include inclusion writers in my contract. So only Native people can direct my work, because with all of these Native plays, I say all, two, that are being produced, they're not being directed by Native people. And so that's how you can really put power and agency in that space. When you work with dramaturgs, when you work with a design team, especially the director, being of that community, but also using consultants. Cultural consultants exist. Even though I'm Native, specifically Seminole Muskogee, I've written a Cheyenne play and I paid out of my own pocket multiple Cheyenne cultural consultants, because natives were not a monolith. You know, it's the same thing in the greater Latinx community, in the greater Asian communities, in the greater Black community. Like, we're not a monolith. There's lots of different things going on everywhere. So I think those are a couple of tactical things at the top of my brain. But I think number one, before you start, it's a little late now, but in the future, ask yourself the question, why do you need to tell that story? And have a damn good answer, because a lot of people are not as nice as Adam and I. They're going to come in with assumptions. And if you can't think of a good answer, why you, and also spoiler, if it's no one else is telling this story, do some research. I have a feeling they are. Anyway, have a good answer. And if it's not a good enough answer, it's not your story to tell. Or maybe it's an opportunity to collaborate with folks of those specific backgrounds that you're writing. Adam, do you have anything else to add? This is my life every day. So.
Totally. I think this is such a great question to open on, because I do believe as artists, you know, we're inspired by the world around us, and that's a beautiful thing, right? And I think those impulses are meant to be interrogated and explored too. And you clearly explored impulses throughout your entire career or education. And I think it's just about building in, where's my intersection and where's my access point? And how far do I follow that before I need to build other seats at the table that I'm building, so I can continue to level up wherever the ambition or expectations are, in accountability to the intersectionality of this moment, right? If you are, you know, because we're not monoliths, no community is one monolith, it means that we're all intersecting together. We have belonging. That's the reality. But if we are saying that because all folks have the ability to connect to all cultures, but no one has the ability to represent any one culture by themselves. So it's just about that interrogation.
Zilla, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I would love to. It looks like I can't start my video.
Yeah, I know, because you were on camera, and I'm trying to arrange
okay.
this for YouTube.
The
so
video
that,
isn't the point. I wanted to say thank you to Tara and to Adam. Tara, I don't think I've ever heard anyone be so emotionally scraping, blunt, brutal, and also protective of the other people in the room who may or may not need that protection, right? So I wanted to recognize the silence of the Indigenous voice and the power that you carry when you come forward. I put out a question in the chat, and right away I get, you need to read this, stop doing mislabor. If I'm going to put myself in front of you, go ahead and take this, take me, like, let me be a tool that you teach, or you use me as a training point. I'm a white person raised by an Indian man who also traveled with the Lakota people, who is white, right? And I have Ethiopian sisters. And like, it's a huge, huge mix. How does somebody like me ask a question and be a support? I asked for bullet points. I didn't mean to make anyone do mislabor of emotional work, but I mean, what actionable things do we need? I'm from a different industry. We can't talk anymore. We have to do things that are measurable.
So Zilla,
and I would love your
let,
answer.
Let them turn. Let them. I don't want to run out of time. That's all. Just.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So I'm willing to sound like the idiot. I'm willing to be the idiot, and I would love it if
let them answer your questions.
would I'm going to leave that. Like, I come from a very mixed cultural background with and the only reason I joined this meeting today was because an Indigenous voice was included. That's why I'm here. I was so shocked. Where did that come from?
Yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Adam, I want to hear from you first, and then I'll throw other things in. Not because I don't want to answer personally, but I'm also cognizant of my own self and my words. I want to hear Adam.
Thanks, Tara. And thanks, Zilla, for that sharing. You know what I mean?
Sorry, yeah.
Certainly, anytime we're sharing our own stories, our identity, that's emotional labor, and that's very much felt in this situation. I don't have a clear answer for you, and I want to come alongside you because there is only the responsibility that you can actually uh,
i.e. bullet
and
points.
do,
Yes,
right?
100%.
But when it comes down to where is your fight and where is your burden, I think that's what you're asking, right? Is that
Yeah,
what you're
and how can I support without ever putting it on you? Like, how can I best support without making you carry?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
asking those questions and following through with what feels actually most human. And that would actually be the most care. Sometimes I hear from folks that are interested in being supportive, and we walk together and we do things, and it actually turns into like, oh, that was a little extractive, right? They were actually trying to be in support so that they could actually educate themselves or get some value or like move their journey together, right? And that's real and that's fine. And then there are other folks that, when we're all going through grief, is another great example I often share. um, how helpful is it to field a lot of texts and a lot of calls from people who say, hey, what can I do? I know that your loved one just passed away. I'm here. I can do anything. Let me support. And now that person has to do the responsibility to figure out how to support that person to support them. How much of an alleviation is it to hear someone just say, "Hey, I actually just sent you a seamless gift card. I'm really thinking about you right now. Hey, we're gonna drop off some cookies and we're gonna take your kids and babysit them. Tell me if that's not appropriate on this day or this day." You know what I mean?
So we offer the action and
Showing up with
we
real
listen for the acceptance or not.
show up with real actionable ways that you
No.
can contribute.
Forgive
Yes.
me, but we have 3 more people with questions,
Thank
and
you
Adam doesn't
so
have a lot of
much.
time.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
also, no, I mean, speaking for my own self, time is relative. Like, I know we had till 6:30, but for my own self, Adam, I'll let you speak for yourself.
Yeah.
If folks want to continue to ask questions, we go past that. I don't have a problem because I feel as though like we're having this like generative space, and I would love to be a resource. And the one last thing I want to throw out, from Zilla's question that Adam added is, maybe don't walk up to a random person of color on the street and ask questions. However, there are consultants who do this for a living. Like Adam and I are consultants. We do this a lot. And so you don't have to worry about our emotional well-being. Like speaking for my own self, I got a whole practice. I'm okay, y'all. I'm okay. I get paid to do this. Don't come up to me in my recreational time, but I get paid. Talk to me. I'm okay. Like you don't have to worry about me so much as a consultant. But yeah, go to consultants, go to folks who have self-elected to be in this kind of space. Don't just go up to your one friend of color and ask them these questions when they didn't consent to be in that kind of emotional supportive place.
Huge.
Carolyn Brown, would you like to come in and ask your question?
Yes, and this question is for Adam, and this is regarding the injury standard group that you were talking about.
Yeah.
My question to you is that you said that you're cultivating BIPOC investors, and I wanted to know how can like self-producing artists or playwrights benefit? Because are you cultivating investors to take advantage of, say, the next great work that's coming from Lynn Nottage and Katori Hall and Susan Laurie Parks and the late August Wilson, because everyone wants to produce August Wilson work? Or are you looking at new writers and new works from the lesser known, well-known names in terms of BIPOC playwrights?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first step is around collective economics, right? Us being able to pool our finances together. And then after that, it's about decentralized leadership. So from our community, we say, hey, what work excites us? And how do we decide what we want to support? So it's generated from the community. together. So it's not any one specific thing, and I can't tell you what we will end up being invested in our entire portfolio because it's just not my decision. It's the decision of all of us and how we move together in our dialogue around what is accountable to our threshold of responsibility.
So can I be self-serving and get your contact information and let you know about the work that I'm doing?
Oh, absolutely. And please, I'll drop the link to, I believe Tara dropped it earlier
She
to the
did.
standard group. Check it out. There's all of our contact there that you can hear more about what we're doing. And I'll also say, as I mentioned, we're building it with the empowerment of BIPOC folks at the forefront. However, it does serve everyone. It's actually an open offering to all folks that are interested in being accountable to practicing in these types of ways and values.
Carolyn, you might want to check the chat. Your fan club is here.
I see. Okay, thank you.
David.
Hello. Yeah, so speaking earlier, I'm a Southeast Asian playwright, but throwing out there, I'm also a cultural critic for the BIPOC Critics Lab at the Kennedy Center.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, certainly that's a good step to getting people that are unheard, the voices of the unheard, into the criticism pool, because a lot of critics are white. Yeah, generally, do you know? Yeah, like, so we are trying these social media resources and stuff. Do you know any other sort of resources that could be really good to get our voices out there as critics?
As critics, particularly?
Yeah, probably critics for theater, particularly maybe just generally arts too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna take a second to really figure that out because especially I'm not as well versed in the critical world too. My work and my practice has not been as engaged in where those resources are. Let me take a second and think about what communities I am in part of, because, and I say that too, it kind of sets up a different practice, is when we're engaged in this work, it's always in the room, right? If we're actually building the roads reciprocally, anywhere you want to get, and this is my biggest advice to producing in general, build reciprocal relationships, and whatever you need will always be in the room. It might not be immediately next to you, but it's in the room, if that makes sense. So let me think about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then for my own self, I'm real familiar with the BIPOC Critics Lab. I'm like a huge fan, love it. Everywhere I go, I'm just like, oh, you looking for some critics? Here you go. Being cognizant that I'm like a freelance artist as well. And then my, theater that I run is a youth theater specifically. And so we have little different things going on. And it's a culturally specific organization. But anyway, yeah. And so I hope that's also helpful that, like, speaking for other freelance artists I've been in rooms in, like, we're very loud. I'm very loud that when theaters do my work, either as a director or playwright, that white people frankly have no business critiquing my work because I write in a decolonial lens that's not within the Eurocentric scape of theater. So it's like apples and oranges. If you never encountered an apple, why are you trying to critique it? Doesn't make any sense. So I usually point the theaters I personally work with to the Critics Lab. And so I can't think of anything like, special. I mean, I'm loud on Twitter and I tell people there too. I do hope that it's a little comforting to know that there are freelance artists like myself who are constantly like, go here, go here, go here. Don't critique my, do not bring in Peter Marks from the Washington Post to critique my show. I don't want to hear it. Full offense to Sir Mr. Marks. Used to live in DC, y'all. Fun time. Anyway, right? So I hope that's a little helpful.
I actually thought about foundational support as well. From the Ford Foundation to Mellon to NEFA, particularly. NEFA, the New England Foundation for the Arts, has specifically a grant section for all of their artists that they award financial support to potentially bring in writers right? To amplify their work, to shadow the development of their work. And I think reaching out and creating those relationships can also create networking because they have missions for diversity and inclusion, and they're supporting work that is diverse and multifarious. So it's important to have writers and critics in connection to the projects and the artists that they support.
I want to just confirm or underscore something that you said, Tara. Having run a play reading series for 22 years, it took a couple years to figure it. Well, it took more than a couple years. It took quite a few years to figure out that the works that were recognized were the works that the readers could identify with, and I started making conscious decisions to bring readers on who would have the ability to understand the other voices that are not the familiar voices. So I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. Some people just do not hear your work the way you hear it, and they need to learn how to. So one last question that before, because I know that Adam has to go. Arlene, can you come in and ask your question?
Am I up there? I am. Hi. Yeah. Well, my question was some of them were answered, but I am white, as you can see, but I have done many shows in the past 20 years. They're all Black cast, Black musicians. And like Wild Woman Don't Have the Blues, that did very well in Harlem, in Midtown and Japan. But I will have, as the show goes on, somebody of color will tell me, it's not, which hasn't happened yet because they're more educational. I think that's a good way to start with some educational shows about, like Rose and Reparations, the show I have now. So it talks about reparations, about how white people were given, land where Black people weren't. And well, that's first part of it. But then I add in some, there's singing, there's a little bit of humor, there's how to clap on the backbeat. That inviting.
Arlene, for time, I just want to ask you, can you put this into a question for
I guess it started out as like, where can I go to get, smaller places to get this, to educate white, to get Black and white audiences, which is mostly what I have. Are there any resources that I can, educational theater, I guess?
I mean, to have a more comprehensive answer to your question, I would have to understand, who you're in relationship, who have you been talking to this work about, and who haven't you, right? I mean, of course, if it's an educational route that you want to go in, theater for young audiences, there's
adult education.
I mean, there's certainly institutions of higher education, but at a certain point, I'm wondering what the expectation is for this process, right? Is it just to be seen? Is it a commercial project? What is the purpose for the transaction that you're not, I assume, being fulfilled with?
Yeah, to get it seen and to educate people that, in a way that it's comfortable. Because to educate, whites also, I've done other things that, or even South Africa played my reparations, I had people educated. And that has been my goal in the past over 20 years to interview, to give this to white people in something that they could swallow, that they will learn, maybe just even a little bit of something that they can take with them and say, oh yeah, maybe like white privilege, to teach what white privilege is without like smacking them. This is white privilege, because that really turns people off, but to educate, and just about every show I've done has a little bit of that in there.
So there's, yeah, no, it's okay.
Some final words of advice, maybe, so that we can wrap up.
Yeah, I will say that in these creative communities of color is that a lot of artists are asked the exact same question that you're asking. I've been asked a lot to write Native 101 plays so white people can understand that natives are still alive, and so on and so forth. That's a really inappropriate and terrible ask of a creator of color. And I really want to challenge that notion of educational plays for adults, because for white people specifically, because white folks can learn from plays that are culturally specific, that are not meant to educate people on a 101 level. Like I think about slave play, Jeremy O'Hara's a slave play. That is an extremely educational play for white folk. And his main intention is not, let me show you how anti-Blackness is everywhere and this, that, and the other. It's not spoon-fed, it's not handheld. Like, y'all are adults, we don't need to handheld you. Like, I have a play specifically, fully Native cast. At the very beginning of the play, one of the characters tells the white folks in the audience, this play ain't to educate you. You're going to learn from us just existing. And audiences' reactions to that have been, they've learned so much. And so I really want to challenge you, because that's really weaponizing white supremacy through the creative voice of a BIPOC creator in that question, and really challenge you to open your mind to what can be an educational experience for white audiences that doesn't result in like, here is your Black 101, white fragility 101 plays. I mean, sure, those exist, but there's far, far more that do far, far more educating that aren't that. And so I think it's an opportunity to read more, go on New Play Exchange. I mean, there are so many listservs of Black, Indigenous, and people of color who write shows. Read, learn, because I can guarantee you don't need the White Fragility 101 handheld play. I can guarantee you're going to learn a lot more from a lot of different plays. So Adam, I wonder if you had anything else to your final words. Those are my finals, I promise.
Well, that was really great. I think it's so much about, right? Earlier we were talking about who are we prioritizing, whose comfort are we prioritizing, right? And education, oftentimes I don't think that we create education because the student says, this is all I want to learn, right? So sometimes we need to reframe the conversation.
But I think if we don't educate, you just can't fight people into it. You know, I've had these. I'm in a lot of social.
I have to stop you because it's so late. I want to thank Tara and I want to thank Adam for a brutally frank conversation. Thank you. It was every bit as difficult as I expected. So
we need to keep doing these things, and
I'm happy to do it. I'll do it once a month if you want.
This is exactly, I think, what I was sharing before, right? We need to find spaces where we can hold the space accountable. So just how we're showing up, it's not personal, but we have to say the thing, we have to react to what's said so that we know we're all speaking in draft oftentimes. And if we're not offering our first draft, we don't know how to edit. We don't know how to make it better. So Bob, you shared so frankly and wonderfully, and it was so illuminating, and it brought us into like really, really amazing, valuable places, but we're just going to be like, we're just going to react to it. We're going to call it out. We're going to say what it is, and we're holding the space accountable, but we can keep moving, right? We don't have to dwell and make it personal. So
yeah, I wish all my panels were like this. This is fun. This is great.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have to confess something. This is going to make me look terrible. This is my first encounter with the phrase white fragility. So I didn't even know. I didn't even know it was something I had. So I've learned a ton from you guys. I appreciate your being with us today. I want to just do a little thank you to the YouTube viewers who are hopefully going to be watching this at some point. I want to ask everybody to consider supporting True. We do these for free if you need it to be free, and if you want to pay something, we don't stop you. So I keep losing my screen. So YouTube viewers, I'm going to go back to gallery view because I keep losing my screen. So I want to say to everybody that if you want to support True, if you want to show your appreciation of what we do and the conversations we have, go to truedonate.com, TRUdonate.com. Anything is welcome. Anything is appreciated. And YouTube viewers and also everybody in the room, be a subscriber to True on YouTube. just subscribe. Once we hit 1,000, which is going to be in like 10 years, once we hit 1,000 subscribers, YouTube gives us stuff. I mean, we can do things we can't do until we have 1,000 subscribers. So it's a goal. It's a goal you can help us reach. And thank you, and God bless everybody. And maybe I'll see you all next week. We're going to talk about the National New Play Network and some things that they offer playwrights and some things that they offer producers. I think it's a conversation for both sides.